Is everybody awake out there?
Yeah,
So-
they are. We don't have Starbucks here, real coffee. So they.
Real coffee. So my name is Nihal. This suit is actually made in Italy. Hey! So Reese, I actually usually dress like Reese, like a startup entrepreneur, but another bad joke, when in Rome. But bump, no? Nothing?
We are in Milan now, you know. Yeah. Well.
So I have a really boring topic, and it's probably the most boring topic for after lunch during the food coma. So I'm not going to actually talk about any of this. Instead, I think I want to really focus part of my time on my journey. You know, I think that one of the things I've learned as an entrepreneur is constantly being inspired by other entrepreneurs. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience, had a lot of conversations already today about hearing these stories. So these are some companies that I've been fortunate enough to touch over the past 12 years. I started in mobile pretty early in 1999 in Philadelphia. Went to college at the University of Pennsylvania and actually decided to create my own company after graduating. It was the first .com boom, right? So literally you could write a domain name .com on a napkin and get funding for it, and that's what we did. Without a business plan, my roommate and I raised about $1 million in 1999 to create essentially what was a city guide for Philadelphia. It was called phillytonight.com. That company, it was a very typical sort of .com story. We spent $1 million very quickly. We hired a lot of people that were not producing, that had nothing to do with revenue. But we were getting a lot of hits, right, on the web and a lot of page views that really didn't translate to revenue. So in 2001, obviously, the bubble burst. And we were unable to obtain more funding. And so we were looking at some of the things that we created at Philly Tonight. One of those things was an SMS delivery system for content, specifically nightlife or entertainment-oriented content. So you could select, say, hip-hop in London, put in your phone number, and we would actually text you every evening with what we thought was the best event for hip-hop in London to go to. We kind of looked over the logs, and we realized we actually had 25,000 users signed up for this such service. This was the year 2000 now. And we thought that, you know, maybe we're onto something. At that time, mobile in the US was way behind the rest of the world. Here in Italy and in Europe in particular, you never had some of these issues which, for example, if I was on one carrier in the US, AT&T, I actually could not send a text message to another carrier, Verizon. People could not text each other, right? Because we had very different protocols built by these companies. Verizon was using, for example, a CDMA technology, and AT&T at that time was using GSM. Everything in Europe was GSM at that time. So we thought that we put together something unique, and we bridged this together. Now, I actually ended up moving to San Francisco in 2001 and took that SMS technology and decided to sell it to brands and to marketers. And I thought that perhaps a Pepsi or a McDonald's would want to reach their customers through text messaging, through opt-in text messaging. So that company is a little company in the top right called IPSH, IPSH. The name actually came from the sound that a DJ makes when they scratch a record, because that's actually how I paid my bills for the next 3 years. So in San Francisco, I was literally flying in as other people were flying out. 2001, people were crying. There was tumbleweed, you know, rolling around the city. People were leaving cars at the airport because their H-1B visas had expired. So it was the height of the bubble. Obviously, we weren't making much revenue at IPSH, so I went to my sort of favorite pastime, DJing, and actually ended up as a regular DJ for 2 or 3 years in San Francisco. My name was DJ Metaphysic to all my fans out there. Eventually, the mobile market started growing. And in the US, finally, people could text each other. In 2002, something pretty amazing happened called the cross-carrier short code that allowed brands to put a 5-digit code on a wrapper, for example, a Big Mac wrapper, or in television like on American Idol, and consumers, regardless of carrier, could text in and actually create direct response with brands. And so my company, Ipsh, was one of the first to really use that at scale. We ran, for example, with Master Foods and McDonald's, hundreds of millions of packages. We ran short codes where people would now start interacting with brands. You guys are all familiar with it now, and you've used it to interact with television, to interact with newspapers, to interact with consumer packaged goods. We ended up actually growing the company, through that hardship, out of my apartment to a slightly bigger office, to a much bigger office. Finally, 2005, we were profitable. A lot of our competitors were getting venture funding, and so I went to two of the biggest ad holding agencies, Omnicom and WPP. We shared a lot of similar clients for investment, and it turned out that Omnicom, if you ever mention the W word to Omnicom and the O word to WPP, they get very defensive. They're big competitors like Pepsi and Coke. And so we ended up selling the company to Omnicom at the end of 2005. That was one of the first sort of ad holding acquisitions of any mobile agency. And that's when kind of this started. At undergrad at University of Pennsylvania, I also met a kid by the name of Omar Hammoui, who actually ended up dropping out of Wharton, and he had started a company called AdMob, the second logo up there on the top. And he started it at the end of '05, right after I had sold Ipsh. And I started helping him build. What he wanted to do is build the first mobile ad network, essentially, using banner ads to drive traffic from specific sites to other sites, like we have on the web. So I was very lucky to get involved early in AdMob as a board member and as an investor, and I think from there, sort of my mobile experience skyrocketed. For those of you that know, AdMob actually exited a couple years ago to Google, and these are some other companies that have kind of inspired me to act as an investor or an advisor as well. So today I actually run a company called Local Response, and it's actually my 5th company that I founded. So the first company, Philly Tonight, actually turned into Urban Groove, and it went bankrupt in 2001. That was actually the best experience I've ever had. Literally, we had to file in the US, it's called Chapter 11, where we had probably about $400,000 of debt on the balance sheet. We couldn't raise any more money, so we had to file bankruptcy. And at that time, it was obviously very challenging, right? Especially as a young kid. I think I was 20 years old. I didn't want to do it, obviously not to your family, not to your friends. But fortunately, there were a million other companies doing it as well, so it made life a little bit easier. Ipsh was the 3rd company, and after we sold Ipsh, I started a company called Buzzed that also failed. It was a city guide focused on the consumer, similar to Foursquare a couple years before, but Buzzed actually turned into Local Response, which I'm going to end the presentation with. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about mobile, but I wanted to kind of paint my background and why I'm inspired. I think I'm very fortunate because I found my passion very early in my career, and that was essentially mobile marketing. I know it's very niche, and people don't usually enter the world saying, I want to do mobile marketing, but I was lucky to find it early on. And I think some of these things have really made it very passionate for me. So one is, quick show of hands, how many people here have their cell phone more than 2 feet away from them at any time during the day? More than 2 feet. A couple people, not very many. So if you think about it, that's pretty crazy, right? I mean, we go take a shower and the phone's on the bathroom sink. We go to sleep and the phone is at the table side or maybe under your pillow. We never, if you leave your home without your phone, you turn around and you go get it. You lose things like your hair. You don't lose your phone, right? Can you imagine living without it? 91% of Americans have their phones 24/7. I imagine it's probably a higher percentage here. I know in Italy there's almost 2 phones per human being, or 2 mobile subscriptions per human being, 60 million in population 100 million mobile subscriptions. The world, obviously, is close to almost 1 for every 2 humans having mobile devices. This is changing the way that the world is operating. So my background is from India. I go back often. One of my favorite stories is going back even just last year, and villages in rural Rajasthan, where my family's from, often don't have running water, and so traditionally they had kids, runners, literally running from village to village when the water's coming. Now they use SMS, right? That's pretty awesome. People that are living, literally under $1 a day have prepaid phones, and they're texting each other. And so this is dramatically changing, the way the world is working. The other interesting thing is today, 2 out of 3 phones are feature phones. But at this time next year, Android, for example, is one of the operating systems that is going to completely replace the feature phone. Thanks to Moore's law, which essentially says that we're innovating, the processor's getting exponentially faster sort of every year, and the cost in turn gets reduced dramatically. You can buy Android phones next year for $20, right? So that's going to dramatically shift the way we're interacting with the internet on the mobile device. Last year, pretty interesting statistic. I think this is a big milestone in mobile. There are more smartphones sold than PCs. This is global, right? That's a big deal. By the end of this year, they say there'll be more connections to the internet globally on your phone than on the PC. Think about that for a second. This is my favorite stat. There's more phones than toothbrushes, right? So a lot of people out there that aren't brushing their teeth, but they're sending text messages.
Because you don't need to have a fresh mouth when you talk via the phone.
You don't.
That's why.
I didn't know I was going to have a sidekick for this presentation. So I'm going to fly through some of these slides now. I think I want to talk about what's next in mobile. You guys kind of already know what's happened. SMS, WAP is kind of a bad word now. It was the first type of internet shown on devices. The world changed with Steve Jobs. Actually, there's a nice museum, or a nice little exhibit in this museum on Steve Jobs and Apple. You guys should all check it out. But 2007, the world changed fundamentally because WAP was gone and mobile web existed. And all of a sudden, we're seeing rich experiences. Companies, like I mentioned, AdMob and Quattro Millennial are now leveraging mobile as an advertising platform, where you don't necessarily need text ads. You can run these little banners that you see everywhere. Mobile-rich media, which is now starting to proliferate essentially videos and interstitials on your device like you see online. That was inhibited because of essentially bandwidth speeds. But now, thanks to 4G, LTE networks, that's no longer a dependency. But one thing we noticed in mobile advertising, even at AdMob, was that 60% of these clicks to these banners are accidental. Why? Because your thumb is bigger than the banner ad, right, on the phone. So whoever took ads from the newspaper and put them into the internet, okay, but the same person that took them from the internet to mobile, I think should be shot, right? Because it's not the same intensity. It's not the same relative propensity. It's completely a different medium, right? Mobile is the only medium that knows who you are, where you are, who you've interacted with, what you've done, and it's with you at all times. You've got to do better than a banner ad. So here's some other technologies that have started to emerge. Bluetooth. If you go to London Victoria Station, for example, your phone can get blue spammed, they call it. You can walk by a bus stop in New York, download a video, and the bus stop lights up. A lot of you have seen QR codes, right? On billboards, you hold up your device, your Android device, and you can interact with the brand. And I think where mobile is going today, there's a huge opportunity, especially here in Italy and in Europe, where mobile penetration is massive, to explore what I call the 3.0 of mobile. And I'll give you some specific examples around that. NFC, you can actually transact with your device. In New York, you can use this in cabs. Tie your phone to Google Wallet or PayPal and touch your phone to the point of sale or to a receiver, and you actually transact. geofencing. So you walk by a retailer and you get a text message from that retailer because you signed up with your carrier to actually receive those text messages. Inaudible tones, I think, are one of the big next evolutions of content delivery. If you've seen, for those of you that live in America, you maybe watched the Super Bowl, you could hold out your device and actually interact with ads. You don't no longer need these apps to be open. It can constantly be listening in the background and actually just open up when a TV commercial is on or when a certain sound that you can't hear but your device can hear is emitted. Video, thanks to 4G and LTE networks. Cross-platform, so I just went to a clothing site online. I can see clothing ads on the phone. And last but not least, my current project, a lot of people call it a little creepy, but what we do is we listen to what you're posting on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Foursquare and all of these different services. And we actually help brands analyze, respond, and retarget against that data. What that means is you can tweet, "I'm hungry," and the next time you go to the mobile web, say in 5 minutes, you might see an ad for Pizza Hut, right? Because we're leveraging all this public data that exists. So, my goals for this presentation really were twofold: to talk a little bit about my journey, hopefully that inspired some of you in the audience, and to talk about mobile, specifically the opportunities that are at your fingertips to innovate in. And hopefully somebody out there is thinking about the next mobile business. I met one entrepreneur, Kurami, earlier today that's actually revolutionizing the ways, actually completely disrupting the queue in Italy through an app. And I think there's a lot of other great ideas. But please find me after this presentation, and I'd love to help mentor you to create the next big Italian mobile startup. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nihal. Stay here, probably there are questions for you.
Okay.
In the meanwhile, I have to say that the hashtag of this event is top trending in Italy. So you're doing a very good job, and the Wi-Fi network's working. Any question for Nihal? No question. Well, I have to say, Nihal, that I was in India last year, and I was talking with a company, a startup company that started to sell mobile applications. But because in India people doesn't use credit cards and 3G networks are not so common, they set up a network of booths in main cities where people can go with their mobile phone and upload application via Bluetooth and pay in cash. So this means that also mobile strategy is mobile marketing strategy must adapted to single different markets.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I think the U.S. is one of the few countries that has close to 80-90% credit card penetration. India is close to 1%. It's growing very quickly, but the payment gateway is largely even through SMS. So when you go to your bank and register, you give them your mobile device, and you can actually just pay using a PIN code using text messaging instead of the credit card. So it's almost leapfrogging the credit card and going to SMS. So you're right, though. Every market is totally different.
But what can be so as an obstacle like the lack of infrastructures can become an advantage?
Oh yeah, indeed. I mean, we're seeing in China and in India and in countries in Africa that people are getting internet connectivity much faster over the mobile device than PC, right? Because it's more expensive to create actual infrastructure and lay down cable than it is to put up a cell tower and activate, tens of thousands of people on the mobile device.
Very good. And another adaptation, I think, could be done on the type of users. For example, you say that in India more mobile phones than people. Is that right? Even kids have their mobile phones. My 10-year-old daughter, she has an Android device because she cannot accept anything that less of a touch screen.
You spoiled her, though. You spoiled her.
So how is it possible to define mobile strategies that are suited for specific type of users?
You mean specific age groups?
Yeah, age group.
Yeah, I mean, I think Apple did a great job with their iOS, right? Because you often see kids interacting with the iPad. And they say to app developers, if you can test it on a 6-year-old, then you know it works for everybody, right? But I think it's all in the operating system and the user experience, which I think Apple has done a great job of for the younger demographics.
Okay, thank you. Any question for him? No question? Director says time is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a, sorry, I had a question.
Oh.
Quick question.
Where? Where is it? I can see anything. Oh, okay. One question.
You mentioned the problem with the thumb on the phone, and I definitely have that problem. There's been quite a lot written recently in the press about the quality of the message of the advertising on the PC versus the mobile phone. Could you comment on that and how you see that improving on the mobile phone?
Yeah, so that's kind of the slide that, sorry, I passed quickly through, but we'll make sure that we share this presentation. The mobile 3.0, where it took a while for us to actually get scale of ads on mobile, but now we're focusing on the targeting of those ads, and now that's this generation. So, you know, what we're doing at Local Response, targeting based on what you've said publicly, but you can target based on location, you can target based on gender, on by age, and I think that's going to make a big difference. It's going to allow that messaging to be extremely contextual, right? So if your phone knows, for example, you go out for a coffee every day, 3 o'clock, you know, after lunch, whatever, then at 2:30, you know, you should be getting be served banner ads for a different coffee shop. And these are the types of innovations that are happening now.